And we're live. We're live. Hello, everybody. Bharat Army Podcast. We're happy to have you all on board. Welcome to all of our cricket fans watching all over the world, wherever you may be. And to all of our cricket fans in India, we hope you're all staying safe wherever you are. We are here today to talk about the World Test Championship final. India versus New Zealand. We finally made it, everyone. It was a long old haul to get to that final, but we are here anyway. Joining us for this discussion, as you can see, are three of the best who have ever done it on this podcast. We've got Hounsloh's favourite son, Amish. How's it going, Amish? You all right?
Not bad, Amish. Not bad, Amish. Not bad, Ash. Happy to be here, mate.
Look at that. He even talks about himself in third person.
That was an accident. Come on, give me a break.
It's all right. Our names are quite similar anyway. It's all good. We've also got Rav joining us on the podcast. How's it going, Rav?
Yeah, really good. I can't believe we've made it. So 4 weeks until a really big final. Let's hope we can do the business.
Yes, indeed. And we've got chat with the Chabra's very own Rishi Chabra, the host, here with us today. How's it going, Rishi? You okay?
Good, Ash. Like Rav said, almost 4 weeks to go, buzzing about the finals now. Hopefully, another ICC trophy to be added to our list.
Yes, we certainly hope so. It's a very, very special ICC trophy, this one, the World Test Championship. We've all kind of fallen in love with the format. I think it's pretty clear to say. We all love Test cricket, obviously, down here. You know, if you ask us old fuddy-duddies, then, Test cricket is the ultimate format of the game. But, I'm raring to go for this. I'm really excited. Let's talk to Rav first. Rav, what do you think about this format? What do you think about the World Test Championship and being at the final?
I think it's testament to 2 years of really, really great progress from the Test side. I think they've clearly learnt around winning key moments, really. And I think if you look at, obviously, how we've gotten to this final, you look at Australia, you look at the England series recently, both of them were nip and tuck. And I think for India to get to a position where they could win convincingly. And I think this series and this final, this tournament, it adds a lot of context to Test cricket, and it gives it that meaning now in terms of knowing that you're focusing on a big goal at the end of 2 years. So I think clearly from the talk that we've heard from the team as well, obviously it's a World Cup final, and I'm glad we're treating it like that because it's that serious. And we have specialist players who only play Test matches. So I think it's hopefully in 4 weeks' time we'll say that after 2 years of a really, really solid preparation that we went to the final, we deserved to win it, and we went and won it. So it's a really, really important time for the team.
Yeah, Amish, World Test Championship final. Obviously, it's going to be played at Southampton at the Ageas Bowl against New Zealand, formidable New Zealand team as well. Mm-hmm. I think that there may be some who are underestimating that team, but still, it's going to be massive for India to be there at that final.
Yep. It's been a journey and a half. The last year in itself has just been some crazy year of results, series, performances. I guess there was a big debate if India are going to make it or not, when they changed the rules of making it based on percentages. Excited for India to be there, and hopefully India can lift the trophy. I think there's been a lot of talk about because you mentioned the structure, right? In terms of is it fair? Because you could play 2 tests against the best team, and that counts for 5 tests against the worst team. Like the point structure's questionable, but as Rav said, I think it's really put importance on Test cricket, which is great. And it gives people a purpose, or it gives Test series a purpose. So happy for India to be there for the first final.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, we did have Stuart Broad earlier on in the week, questioning the format of the World Test Championship. But anyway, here we are. We're at the final, India versus New Zealand. Rishi, we obviously talk a lot about legacy, and you being, MS Dhoni's biggest fan, arguably. We talk about the legacy that he left the team, and obviously Virat Kohli has, to some extent, always lived in his shadow a little bit as the captain of the Indian cricket team. He hasn't lifted a limited overs tournament as of yet trophy, but this would go a long way, I think, to cementing his place really as one of the best Indian captains of the modern era, possibly alongside MS Dhoni, maybe.
Absolutely. I think, winning that one ICC trophy will give him the confidence that he needs. We've seen that, people have been after him that he hasn't won any ICC tournament. He hasn't won any IPL trophy. I know there's no comparison between the two, but I think it's high time that he needs to get going. And plus, I think, winning that final will also give him the confidence in his batting. We've seen in the last 2 years that he's been not really the Kohli that we knew. He hasn't scored those big daddy hundreds. But I think, in the last 5 years, before in the past, we've seen Virat say that, he want the Indian team to see at top of the table when it comes to Test cricket. And he's made sure that has happened. There's a lot of, support staff backing that has gone into, and there are a lot of people behind the scene who's worked towards achieving that target. And we finally held on to that top position. All we need to do is just play 5 good days of Test cricket, and who knows, we might end up as the world champions of Test cricket.
Yes, indeed. Well, we're talking about the batting. You obviously mentioned that the batting has been a little bit questionable as of late. So we're here to talk about the openers and our selection for who the openers should be on this week's podcast. Week by week, we're obviously going to go through the entire squad and who our selections should be leading up to the World Test Championship final. But let's talk about the openers and which openers are actually going to the tournament. So let's first look at the players in our squad selection who we think are pretty much guarantees in the squad. We've got a little graphic that we're gonna put up in a mo of the players who we think are pretty much guaranteed in the squad. So we've got Jateshwar Pujara at number 3, obviously. Virat Kohli at number 4, the captain. We've got Rishabh Pant in the team and Jasprit Bumrah. Those look like the guys who I think pretty much are guaranteed their spots really in the squad. Does anybody have any thoughts about that? I think that these guys are pretty much cemented.
Janesh, where are you, mate? Janesh. I'm sure he'd have a few opinions on number 3. But yeah, otherwise I'd agree with you, Ash. I think those spots are pretty certain.
Okay, all right. Yeah, well, let's talk about the openers now. So, we're taking 4 openers to the tour with us. Those players are Rohit Sharma, Shubman Gill, Mayank Agarwal, and KL Rahul. So, let's start by talking about Rohit Sharma, shall we? Because I feel like he's the one out of these guys who is pretty much guaranteed his spot more than anything else. Let's take a look at Rohit Sharma's stats at the moment and see what he's been bringing to the Test team. So 35 innings, he's got obviously the great average at the moment, high score of 140 with 750s and 800s. I must admit, I always had a little bit of reservation about Rohit Sharma, let's say, as a Test opener. I didn't ever think that he'd make a decent Test opener. He's obviously proved me wrong, but he's even playing well in conditions that are not conducive to Indian batsmen, I suppose. So, Rishi, what do you think about the way that Rohit Sharma has kind of come along as a Test opening batsman now?
Like you said, no one thought of Rohit Sharma as an opener in the longest format. But similarly, that happened back in 2013 as well when MS Dhoni promoted him in in white ball cricket, and he then matured as a player, and we've seen a different Rohit Sharma since then. But if you look at the recently concluded series against England, I think it was Rohit Sharma's batting that made the difference, especially in the last few tests that took us over the line in a lot of situations. But, like we were discussing before the show started, I think Rohit Sharma is one name that is a definite starter in this playing 11. I would also like to, focus on one point. It's just a one-off Test match in the final, which is something that I don't really, agree with. I think if you're playing 6 series over the last 2 years, I think it should have been a best of 3 Test match, played at different conditions, different venues. If you play just one Test match, then it's almost, a lottery that the player can get out on the first ball. He might not score runs, and the same player can come back in the second Test and score another century. So not really to choose from the option that we have, but Rohit Sharma, I think, is a sure shot starter. And with the experience that he has in England, the performance that he had in the 2019 World Cup will definitely give him that confidence to do well in the finals.
Yeah, obviously you've brought it up, so we might as well talk about it. But I personally also have a real problem with the fact that the final is going to just be a one-off match. You've had like 2 years leading up to this point, and it's a one-off match. It all just seems a little bit strange to me. That the fact that it's just one match and not a series as such, best of 3 or something along those lines. But anyway, that's the cards that were dealt with. Rav, Rohit Sharma, what's your thoughts on him as an opener?
I think he's done a really good job in terms of looking at his game and where exactly he can afford to take risks and where he probably doesn't need to take risks. So if you look at how he leaves the ball now compared to in South Africa a few years ago, he's a lot more confident as a player. Just going back to his 161 against England in that second game, it was such an amazing innings that turned the series. And in a test match where it was a square turner from day one and everybody else struggled. Day one, for him to do that, I feel like mentally he's a different player as well now. And I feel that he takes the responsibility. And as Rishi said previously, when Virat's not been getting hundreds and he's closing in on 2 years without international 100, for Rohit to be able to step up and really, really guide the team and give us good starts. Even in Australia, he got 50. So I think I just feel he's more mature as a player. And I think he wants the responsibility that the team is giving him at the top of the order. And that's bringing out the best of him. So as Rishi said also, from 2013, when he was the white ball opener, you saw the kind of impact on his game there. So he's a confidence player, he's a touch player. And I feel that now he's a senior in the team and he's treated like a senior as well. I think you're almost getting that consistency out of him because he sees the value in himself in being in the team at the top of the order. So I'm really glad for him, and I think absolutely he makes the opening slot for this and the England series afterwards.
Yeah, Amish, is Rohit Sharma a guarantee in your starting 11?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if you asked all of us about 2 years ago, no one would have thought Rohit Sharma would be here. I think his career has just peaked in Test match cricket at the right time, and when he came in Australia after his injury, the value of his performances were priceless. He gave us partnerships. He played against his natural game, seeing off the new ball. Whether it was, I think he got a few 40 odds, but those 40 odds led to 60, 70, 80 run partnerships, and that just changes the dynamics of that innings. Plus, we're playing in England. He had a brilliant time in 2019 at the World Cup. I think it was 5 centuries across the tournament. So conditions-wise, I think he'll be pretty comfortable, hopefully. And yeah, like Rav said, in England, against England in India, he played that one knock where he looked like he was batting on a different track, like he was playing a different game. So for him to be able to do that and show that level of class on such difficult conditions, like, we have to give credit where it's due. I think he's guaranteed his spot with the way he's played over the last 12 months. And I also think that despite not being that experienced in Test matches, Kohli values his experience he brings to the table. So within our young team, he's seen as a senior individual. So it's going to be good for Shubman Gill to be batting with him, or whoever it could be, to just whoever is around Rohit Sharma. I think they have a positive vibe that they can leverage from. And every few innings, Rohit Sharma has a big knock. Let's just hope that big knock comes at the World Test Championship.
If you also look at Rohit and you look at, I think a lot of credit has to go to Virat for the way that he's using Rohit now, the way he's bringing him into the leadership circle, the way he's involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
You saw that in the England series.
Yeah.
The collectiveness, and I think now that you can see that they're a team. The two of them, they talk together, they discuss
100%.
tactics together, and I feel that that's also brought the best out of Rohit. And one thing to bear in mind is I was told and looked at Rohit as somebody who was a very weak starter against spin, and look how well he did against England on very tough surfaces. So his game developed as well. And I think that has given him a lot of confidence and helps the team no end.
Well,
in
England. Oh, go on, Amish.
I guess in England, even if a 30-40 is as good as a 60-70 or 100 on a flat pitch. So if our opening partnership gives us, let's say, a 60-70 run stand, we're in touch with. That's a brilliant position to be in these conditions. And I think Rohit Sharma, he's proven that he can bring value with partnerships depending on who he's opening with.
Well, you talk about the conditions a little bit, Amish, because one of the things that concerns me about Rohit Sharma in English conditions, obviously he's going to be against the red ball first up, but he's obviously that New Zealand attack. They worry me quite a bit, I've got to be honest. Let's just take a look at Rohit Sharma's stats against Trent Boult, because I think that's one thing that I think is going to give us quite a bit of a sleepless nights. I mean, head-to-head in tests and stuff, 57 runs, 114 balls, and 1 dismissal and 5 fours. So, not the horror show that we kind of probably think it is. But I think that this is going to be a really, really key battle, obviously, because the worry for all of us that's always happened when India have played in English conditions with the red ball is that we're like 13 for 3 after like 10 overs or something like that. And our top order's been skittled out by these guys who can swing the ball left, right, and centre. So, Rishi, Rohit Sharma versus Trent Boult, that's something that worries me quite a bit.
It does, but then on the other hand, let's not forget, Rohit has been facing Trent Boult a lot in the nets in the IPL. So he's definitely got some idea how to play him. And also, the final is happening in England, so it's not going to be a proper English wicket. I believe ICC is going to prepare the wicket for this match. So there would be something for the opening batsman as well. But, like we've always discussed about Test cricket, if you're batting first and if the conditions is not in your favor, you need to just play out the first hour or so. And whoever is, opening with Rohit Sharma, I think they need to just play out the first hour and a half and just see how it goes. It's a 5-day match. You don't really have to, go at a strike rate of 100. But I think the first few overs would be very crucial. And once you're in, obviously, we know the kind of a player that Rohit Sharma is. He's played a lot of deliveries. He's said then he can go for those big runs.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, it's a little bit of a worry, but let's hope that we can overcome it. Rav, what do you think about this New Zealand attack? Obviously, we've just talked about Trent Boult there and the danger that he poses. But I mean, the rest of them, Jameson, Wagner, and all of the rest of them, I mean, they're pretty frightening.
Yeah, absolutely. Boult, Southey, Wagner, Jameson, and Ajaz Patel is a really good 5 that will be be very competitive anywhere. But I actually think New Zealand have better bowlers all round for English conditions than England do right now. So I think that they're a massive test for the side. I think, as Rishi rightly says, it's an ICC wicket. It's Southampton, which tends to be quite flat days 1, 2, 3. So I think that really it's all about the first innings, and we've said this many times as Indian fans that you set the test match up by solid first innings. You can't lose a test match, so you can't win a test match in an hour, but you can lose it by not batting. And that was Rishi's point just there about giving the first hour potentially. So I think what we need to do is we'll talk obviously about his opening partner, but we need Rohit and the other opener to start very, very well, and also just to give the likes of VK Pujara, number 5, a very, very kind of solid opening. The reason being is that unlike Australia, where the kookaburra tends to go flat and soft, the Dukes, it really can just swing all day, and it can after a flat session, it can start going all over the place. So it's one of those places that you never really feel in, and I think that given that, I think India will adopt probably a slightly longer batting strategy and batting order than maybe they would have done in other places.
Guys, just to touch on New Zealand's bowling, right? One, I guess comparisons with Rohit Sharma are probably easier given the career or the length of time he's been playing, but also let's not take anything away from India's bowling, because Bumrah is as much of a threat, or India's bowling. I think we're probably in the best. This is our best fast bowling unit that we have, so we're going to cause as many threats as they are to our batsmen.
Well, Amish, do you think it's fair to say though that with India, their batting now is actually probably the weaker part of their team? It's a strange thing to say, obviously, considering the batsmen that we produce, but we are actually probably a stronger bowling unit than we are a batting unit at the moment.
Yeah, I think our choices within our batting lineup are probably a bit more debatable. Not that our bowling lineup isn't debatable, because we've got great spots for in contention, but it's a harder choice to pick the right batting lineup compared to picking the right bowling lineup. So yeah, it's a fair point, and it's crazy given the legends that we have produced. Shout out Tendulkar, Dravid, Ganguly, Lakshman, Sehwag, the list goes on.
Yes, indeed, it does go on. Well, let's talk about who that potential partner for Rohit Sharma is going to be. And I suppose the next name that comes to mind is Shubman Gill. So let's just take a look at Shubman Gill's stats at the moment. Obviously, he had a great test series in Australia. But, I think it's fair to say with Shubman Gill that he, is struggling a little bit as of late. Now, obviously, his test match innings are, his test match stats are what they are. He's got an average of 34.4, but he's only played 7 matches, so he's not actually been in the team for that long. And he's looked pretty promising. Shubman Gill in English conditions, we kind of don't know what that is, really. We've not seen it before with a red ball, so I guess we're just going to all have to wait and hold our breath. Rav, you're a big fan of Shubman Gill. Now, the thing that I want to ask you for Shubman Gill is, before the Australia series, the last one, we had Prithvi Shaw opening the batting in the test squad, and he had a horrendous IPL and kind of took that form and that psychology into the test series and was dropped after the first match. Shubman Gill has arguably had just as bad an IPL of this IPL, which obviously just got halted recently. He's arguably had just as bad an IPL as Prithvi Shaw had before the last Australia series. So, does he just walk back into that position, or what are we going to do about Shubman Gill in that opening spot?
I think if you obviously go back to the England home series, Shubman had a poor series, certainly by everybody's standards. I think everybody was expecting a first test 100 or this or that. And I think he clearly didn't play to his potential. I'm sure he'd be the first to say that. But one thing I will say is that having looked at the dismissals of that series, he was out padding up twice. He played quite a few loose shots. I'd like to think that there was nothing technical there that actually shows a weakness, but that's in home conditions. So I think when you move to England, I do think that he potentially has slightly an issue just in terms of trigger movements, how he's moving that foot at the beginning, which if you're very flat-footed in England, it can be a downfall because of the slips that come into play. So I think he's got a time now, and I think just in answer to the Prithvi and the IPL question, enough time will have elapsed from the end of the IPL to the beginning of that series, and then a month after that, and then England, where we're never going to get a better prepared kind of side for these conditions over a summer, where they've got so much time to kind of play. So I personally think he deserves that 91 at the Gabba, which is India's best ever overseas win, and he high scored in that game. I believe that's enough credit in the bank to play in this test match, because to win that test match when it was India's B team and they were chasing over 300 on the final day, he set that up, and I believe that is enough credit in the bank. I don't believe that one series on very, very hard spinning wickets that bear no resemblance to the final should really be held against him.
Now, we are talking about the World Test Championship final here as our kind of main point of chat today. But obviously, in the back of our heads, I think a lot of us are thinking about the England series as well. And Rav, obviously this was in English conditions, but Shubman Gill looked like he really struggled against Jimmy Anderson.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the dismissal in that final test at Chennai when he got Gill and Rahane, I think Gill got a 50 on the final day first. But you're playing very, very hard reverse swing bowling on day 5 on balls that were just moving quite considerably. So I would argue that would get many a player out because Anderson is that skillful. But I do agree that Gill needs to find a way and needs to find a method in these conditions, because the ball will physically swing most of the day. It's not as if after 20 overs, like with a kookaburra, it'll stop. After a session, it's all about the concentration, I feel, and switching on, switching off, which in England is so important. So I personally would stick with him, but I know it's going to be a significant challenge. But I'll give you one thing. I think New Zealand, if you ask New Zealand, who do they think is really talented and who can make a big score against them. The whole world has seen what Gill can do. And I believe that, you look at Brendan McCullum, who's the KKR coach, some of the stuff he said about Gill is very, very complimentary. So I'd like to believe that the New Zealand guys actually see him as a bit of a threat as well, because if you look at what he did again at the Gabba day 5, he can take the game away. And I think that you look at the other alternatives there, I don't quite feel that they have the same options in their game that he does.
Amish, Shubman Gill, what's your thoughts about him?
My thoughts are, to be honest, majority of what Rav said I agree with, in terms of he's got enough credit in the bank. The performances he played in his first series against arguably the best bowling attack in tough conditions in Australia, he came in and he did a brilliant job. Forget the scores, whether he hasn't got 100 or the number of 50s, etc. I think he did get quite a few 50s, but I can't emphasize the value of partnerships. Like he did a job by seeing off the new ball and holding one end and building that partnership so our middle order can come in and not have to address the new swinging ball. I think there are worries and concerns about his technique that you could see in Australia, but because it paid off, no one was dwelling on it, but it was evident. So you were still reaching outside for balls way outside off stump, or I guess if it's in his little box, he's comfortable where he doesn't need to move his feet too much, but he was reaching out for those that are probably like 6-7 stump line, and which you don't want to be doing, especially in England. But I do feel he's the best contention out of our other openers, who I wouldn't say any of them haven't got the same risk that Shubman Gill brings. And I think Rohit Sharma in the last 2 series he's been opening with Shubman Gill, and therefore there's a bit of comfort there. So for me, I think there's a lot of importance about that partnership. I can't emphasize that anymore. And yeah, if I think about a comparison of, let's say, Agarwal, the impact that Shubman Gill has had in 2 tough series, I can see why a lot of people would fear him more than Agarwal. He can change a game like he did in Gabba.
If you look at, we said about shot selection and playing outside 6 stump and everything. Look at Virender Sehwag. We had a player there who he wouldn't change his game for anybody. Yeah, but he went out and scored, 8,000, almost 50. So I just think if we look at what we've done in the past, we've taken risks with very talented openers whose techniques may be slightly not all over the place, but they go for it a little bit more.
Yeah,
I think it's a high risk, high return strategy. Personally.
True, but then I think we should, because before the Australia series, Agarwal's technique didn't have as much scrutiny. He kind of opened a can of worms in Australia that put his contention in place with his technique. And I don't think we should neglect the fact that Shubman Gill still has some things to work on a technical basis, but the value he's brought in 2 series, and we talk about his failures against England in India, but guys, the whole team failed. Apart from Rohit Sharma, no one did good. So let's not.
That's true.
Let's put it in context.
Yeah,
and it's his second series as a young player coming in probably the most. Do you know how we probably don't value home stats as much as away stats? But the conditions they played in India are probably tougher than most away conditions India played in. So it was difficult. Not that that's an excuse or anything, but I'm just saying, like, let's have some context to his failures.
I think it would be very order to drop him when his last series knock was a series-winning knock in Australia. Yeah. I personally think that you have to disregard the home series a bit for what you've just said, because the conditions are so different. If you don't want to play him at home, play Prithvi Shaw at home, fine. But if you're playing away, you have to look at what he last did.
But is there a rationale to drop him? Has someone put their hands up and said, I'm ready, more than what Shubman Gill's done in the last 6-7 months?
I just think people have been quite impatient, if I'm being totally honest. I think that the issue about, he's going to go 12, 13 tests without 100 because he didn't get one in the 5 games before. We make these things up.
He's young. He's young. And if we compare when people were making hundreds after 2-3 matches or in a shorter period of time, guys, the average Test cricket scores were a lot higher. Now scores aren't as big, and therefore,
Absolutely.
I've said this before when we talk about stats, but a 70 can be as meaningful as 100, or a 30 can be as meaningful as a 50.
Yeah, go on, Rishi.
Let's not forget, that inning that he played where he scored 91 runs. We all saw how he went after Stark in those overs. He absolutely belted those big hits. So we know that, in a pressure situation where, say, Indian team, haven't scored a few runs in the first session, in the first half, and when you need someone to, accelerate the scoring rate, Gill is absolutely capable of doing that. Even though, he hasn't had a good IPL, but that was just 6-7 games that he played, not really that you can take out from that small series. And, like Rav and Ami said, he's been part of the Indian setup. He's been opening with Rohit in the Australian series and England series. I think that there's a slight edge for Shubman Gill to open. And if you want to stick with someone, we keep calling him the future of Indian cricket. We keep saying that, he's a long run player. So if he's actually meant for that long run plan, you need to give him start somewhere. And what better way to give him a start in a World Test Championship final where there's going to be a lot of pressure on him. And let's see how he absorbs all that pressure and performs. And probably that will do him a lot of good in the England series as well then.
Guys, he's 21. He's 21.
Exactly. So long way to go for him in international cricket.
I don't think anyone would argue that he's going to have a long, fruitful career, touch wood. But for him to,
but the thing is, Amish, Amish, that we're in this one-off Test match. So, I get what you're saying, that he's got a long career ahead of him and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Ash, I take your point. I've always been, don't pick someone for their future, pick someone who's going to win you now. So do you think some of the alternatives are going to do better than what Shubman Gill can do? Because it's about opportunity cost.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's take a look at some of the alternatives. So your other main alternative is Mayank Agarwal. So let's get Mayank Agarwal's stats up at the moment. So gentlemen, 12 matches, 857 runs, a high score of 243 versus South Africa, and an average of 42.9. Those are pretty impressive stats.
Mate, I thought about this myself because his stats are brilliant and Shubman Gill's aren't. Once again, you got to put context in, and a lot of his against South Africa, where we dominated, so 1920, average of 85, 4 innings, 340 runs. Against Bangladesh, 257 runs in 2 innings, average of 128. With all due respect to South Africa and Bangladesh, South Africa aren't the team that it used to be. And when it came down to playing against New Zealand and Australia away, which is the more recent series that we can judge off, it hasn't reflected. And I think everyone would agree there was a change in his technique. Something changed because he was batting very differently and he was caught out. So we had enough evidence to say that has been rectified to displace Shubman Gill.
Okay, Ashish, adding to what Ami said, the New Zealand series that India played, we lost both the test matches. Let's not forget that Mayank Agarwal was the top run scorer for the Indian cricket team. Even though, there was not many runs scored by the New Zealand batsmen as well. I think there's a difference of 22 runs as compared to the top scorer in the series and Mayank Agarwal. But it is actually his technique that, lost him his place in the Australian series. His back lip was almost touching his helmet when he was about to face the bowler. And unless, he's done some magic trick on his batting technique, I'm not really sure, why he should be in the playing 11. Like I said, it's a one-off test match. Rather than taking the risk of playing someone like Mayank Agarwal with Rohit Sharma, you would want to go with a settled 11 in form of, Rohit Sharma and Shubman Gill. And then obviously you can see how the England series go, because we'll have a lot of time between the England series as well. You play a lot of practice matches, but then with the one-off test match, I think Agarwal making it to the playing 11, his chances are very best.
But Rishi, the thing is, because this is a one-off test match, and as you've just mentioned that Mayank Agarwal is the highest scorer in New Zealand when we played them last time, and that's the same team that we're playing this time, I don't know which one the bigger risk is. Do you take the guy who has this flawed technique, who lost his place in the team because of this technique, who has done well against this opposition previously, Or do you take Shubman Gill, who is a little bit of an unknown quantity playing in England against Australia, given that in England rather, given that this is a one-off match? That's my question. That's the conundrum that I've got in my head.
Shubman Gill any day, because that England series was long back ago, and then because Mayank Agarwal was scoring those runs, no one actually spoke about his technique, whether he was able to get the same runs with the technique that he had in Australia. But now that Ami said the worms are out, we all know even the New Zealand support staff would be looking at those videos, seeing where he's lacking, and his technique is not something that you can change overnight and then come back and score big 100. But because it's a one-off game, personally, I think the management would be more comfortable playing Shubman Gill, because even though he's not scored those big runs, but he's shown in those pressure situations that you can actually trust him. There's someone top of the order who can bat, who can score those runs, and he's not afraid to go after the likes of Mitchell Starc and other Australian bowlers. That's what we saw in Australia. So I think it is definitely advantage Shubman Gill when it comes to Agarwal and Gill comparison.
Guys, you've said that there's a risk with both, right? So as Rishi said, New Zealand would be probably more fearful of Gill because they've seen less of him compared to Agarwal. And I think Gill has more of an X factor to him. And plus, would you rather take the risk of changing something settled based on something that that's still a bit of a myth? There's no certainty about Agarwal doing well. So I'd rather stick with what we've been exposed to and have developed more comfort in.
Rav, what do you think?
I mean, it's a really interesting debate. I personally think that I saw some of the comments below about Gill's technique.
Mr. Ahan Gupta is coming in with a few comments now. He's just said, so you can't trust someone who scored double hundreds, apparently.
I have an answer to that. Let Rav finish, and then I'll probably answer that.
Okay, sure.
Ahan. Yeah, sure. I mean, look, we've seen Mayank stats that have come up. If you're looking at like for like, you look at away stats for both of them and what's going to happen in that. Shubman's obviously had one great away series. Mayank didn't, but Mayank had many great home series. We scored double hundreds against South Africa. Those are not the pitches that we're going to face. So for me personally, I just want to put those to the side because I don't think it's relevant. I slightly take issue with the fact that Gill has a huge issue with the swinging ball. Again, if you look back at the dismissals, he padded up to 2 deliveries. He got a few good deliveries, but again, when Anderson was doing all that magic on day 5, first test in Chennai, Gill was the only one who actually stood up and got 50 and held up the victory charge for England. So I personally feel that if you look at where Gill is at and some of the points that have been raised are really sensible, that you've got to look at who's capable of going out there and putting in that performance and winning with no fear. And I just feel that when you look at what Gill has done, it's a completely different challenge. We know a Duke's ball is different, but if you look at the intent and you look at the way that he'd set up on that final day in Brisbane, even in Melbourne, actually, he played really, really well on debut. Yep. So, you've got to look at these things. This is a kid who's going into huge foreign grounds and performing straight away. And I just feel that at the moment, he deserves possession of that slot, because I think if we're going to start dropping people based on rank turners that we prepared in India, then we've got a much bigger discussion to be had than just Gill, surely. Because Pujara didn't get any runs, did he? Against England.
Yeah, Rishi.
Coming to Ahan's comment that someone who scored a double 100, you can't really drop him. Well, India did manage to drop Karun Nair after scoring that triple century. The only player who scored a triple century was dropped. But like Raf said, that double 100 against South Africa came long back ago in 2019 in Indian conditions. We were playing South Africa at home, and that was a different series. A lot has changed since then. You can't really, keep focusing on previous stats and, keep giving players a chance again and again. And I absolutely agree with Rab, that we have to give Shubman Gill that chance, because we've seen how, fearless he was when he made his debut in Australia, and the kind of cricket that he played, I think just shows that, he's hungry for that one opportunity where he can show the world that, okay, he's meant for that big stage.
Yeah, we just had another comment come in a little while ago from Anmol. Anmol, who's a regular on our IPL podcast, saying that's why you get KL Rahul in and change the syllabus. An interesting way of looking at things. Thank you for that, Anmol. Let's just look at KL Rahul's stats real quick. I think that KL Rahul is pretty much an outsider for an opening spot in this. I don't think he gets in above any of the rest of the guys. Only 2 matches. 101 runs, higher score of 44 versus the West Indies, and an average of 25.3. I don't know if there's any chance of KL Rahul making it into the team at any point, really. I don't know. What do you guys think? Does anybody think that KL might have a shout for anything at all?
No.
Probably
the
not.
Only way him coming into the playing 11 is unless someone gets injured at the last moment, and rather than playing someone who's injured, we'll have KL Rahul in the middle. But with the opening slot, I'm not really sure if KL Rahul will fit in.
I hate to play, put a downer on this. Then why is KL Rahul even going then? If there's no chance of him getting into the team in this World Test Championship final, is he even going to play against the England series?
The reserve wicketkeeper, we're not really sure whether Ridhiman Saha will go to England. He's tested positive again. And if Pant, worst case scenario, Pant gets injured, who do we have as a reserve wicketkeeper? We'll have to have KL Rahul as that. And again, we also have the same team going for the England series as well, long 5 test match series. And that's going to be the first series of the new World Test Championship format, the new block. So it's going to be a big series. And with the openers, if they fail in that England series, who knows, KL Rahul might get a look in as an opener in that series as well.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that Agarwal or KL Rahul should be... let's not say they've still got a future. I still think there's more to come from them. But right now, for the World Test Championship, I don't think they make the cut. But who knows? It like Rishi said, England's a long 5 test series. Things could happen. Touch wood, we don't get any injuries. But if there's failures or something like that, then I think we've got alternative options to bring in and try out and give them an opportunity for them to cement their place.
If we were being very, very if we looked at things a different way, there is an argument that you could potentially back Gill long-term in the middle order, and you could put Agarwal at the top. It's not going to happen for this series, but we're going to get on to number 5 in a bit, but if you clearly look at the spots that we have available, at the moment, 3 and 4 are not available. Gill could actually be a long-term number 3, in which case then that gives you an option.
Disagree with that. I don't think his technique is there for a number 3.
Do you not think?
No, I don't think he...
No, but then, Amish, in situation where you have a wicket down in the very first over, you practically, the number 3, then the one down player actually comes in as a opener itself with just 1 wicket down. So there's not much difference over there.
But if that's the case, do you really want your number 3 to be someone who could play like an opener in a test match? I probably wouldn't say so. I would want my number 3 to come in, if we are in that situation, to settle the ship and rebuild, which I don't think that, or from the small career that Shubman Gill's had so far, who knows what could happen in the future, but I think there's better value of his game elsewhere in the innings as opposed to number 3. But just on KL Rahul, right? Because in England in 2018, right, I think he came in the last test, he got 140 odd. And because I saw a few comments on the Bharat Army post a few days ago, right? And that, despite it being a great 140, with all due respect, I don't think that was a great test match innings. He played in the air, he played rash shots, chasing balls outside off stump, and it paid off. However, it could easily gone the other way. So that one innings, I don't think is a strong enough justification to give him a slot.
Also,
the World Test Championship right now.
They were chasing 500. So if you,
cool.
if you chase...
and it was a dead game. If I'm honest with you, he was able to play fearlessly. But don't get me wrong, I'm still a fan of KL. I'm still a fan of Agarwal. So I think not ruling them out for the future.
For me, the key thing is that this is all about pressure and all about who can handle pressure. Because when you look at England, the pressure is going to be on when we're batting in the field. It's going to be on all day. right? So because the ball is always in play. So I think what we've got to get to a position where we have players who can soak up that pressure. We know that obviously.
That's a good point, because in Australia, Shubman Gill looked unfazed. He looked so calm, composed against the best bowling lineup that for someone that young to come across as chilled, relaxed, and just didn't look threatened, I think that's a brilliant characteristic to see at someone that age.
So let me ask you guys this one quick question, just before I move on to your selection for who your openers are going to be, so we can add them into our lineup for the World Test Championship final. We've obviously got this long series, as you mentioned, against England afterwards, and this is the whole squad that's going. Opener for that series later on down the line, if we need a little bit of rotation. Do you think Washington Sundar is going to get a look in at any point as a possible opener in the England Test series?
I think that his game, I wouldn't mind him opening, but right now there's alternative options that are ahead of him in the pecking order. But in terms of the way he plays, I think, and he's still young as well, right? So he's got a long future ahead of him. Who knows what could happen? But right now for the England series, I think if you've got Agarwal and KL, unless you're going to play unless we've had a few failures and we really need to change our team, I can't see it happening in England.
I think the only way it will happen is if Ashwin was to get injured. If Ashwin was to get injured, and it's a spinning wicket, you're never going to play 3 spinners in England. You might play 2.
True.
The final 2 tests are in the Oval and Old Trafford in September. So if there was
even if Ashwin did get injured, would you still open him? You'd play him, but you wouldn't open him.
It's like you're sending someone who's not really prepared for war, at war without any backup. Ashish, I mean that question. If you ask me, worst conditions to send someone who hasn't had proper Test match experience, Test cricket experience. English conditions, the ball swinging the entire day, and then you have someone who's not really a proper opener. Opening against the like of Jimmy Anderson, Stuart Broad, Jofra Archer, I think it's going to be very, very difficult. And
there's no need to do that.
And not something that, a lot of players would want to witness. I mean, so True. Not really in favor of that. But I think we have a lot of batting openers option that we can go with. And let's not forget, KL Rahul started his international career in Test cricket as an opener. He did score a few hundreds as well, opening for India. So I think it's just that, he lost that momentum and then a lot of players came and took his place. So if needed, I think KL definitely deserves another shot at the opening slot.
Hey, look, there's no need to get angry at me, okay? I just ask the questions that the people want me to ask. Yeah, seriously, jeez. Okay, right. Let's go on to our selections for who is going to be opening our Test series. So, Amish, who are your 2 openers?
Mr. Sharma and Mr. Gill.
Okay, Rav?
Snap.
Rishi?
Same. The only thing that I would like to add, I couldn't say that at the beginning of the show, when we showed that, slide that had a sure shot playing players, I would definitely add Ravindra Jadeja to that squad as well. That's one player who deserves to be in that playing 11, no matter where we play, which pitch we play on. I think he deserves to be in that playing 11.
Do you know what? Rishi, I totally agree with you, but for some strange reason, I don't know why, Jadeja doesn't get that level of respect or credibility, or
absolutely,
we don't recognize his value. I don't understand why, because he's done so much. To be honest, he's always been a gun player, but it's like when we have to debate how many spinners we play, etc., we don't. He becomes our second choice because Ashwin is brilliant, but India should play to our strength. So even if that means playing 2 spinners, they're too good.
And when you're playing someone like Ravindra Jadeja in a Test squad, let's not forget he's your best fielder. He can come in and smack the ball left, right, and center whenever you need him, and he's an amazing bowler as well. He's picked up a lot of wickets in Test cricket. Let's not forget he's had those 5 wickets haul, but it's just that like Amish said, he's not given that respect. We saw that in 2019 World Cup as well, when he was added to the playing 11 towards the later half of the tournament and what he did in the semi-final. Sorry bringing that topic up again, but I think he deserves a sure shot spot in that playing 11.
I think
you know what? I'm gonna say something a little controversial here for a minute, if I can wade into my opinion. I think Jadeja should also be down on that list. Not only should he be down on that list, I think he should be the first name down on that list. Ravindra Jadeja is one of the greatest cricketers that India has ever produced. Can somebody else name me who in? Can somebody name me who in this day and age in modern day cricket? You can think back to history if you want. Bats, bowls, and fields as well as Jadeja does in all three formats. Is there anybody comparable to that?
Callis?
Ben Stokes is not a great T20 player.
Callis?
Callis, maybe, yeah, Callis, yeah, in history.
If you go back in history, I would rather pick than Kapil Dev as well, or Imran Khan.
But what I'm saying is that I believe that Jadeja is on that level. I think he is just as good as those guys is. Like Amish said, it's just because he doesn't get those plaudits for some odd reason. Maybe he's a spinner and not a fast bowler. It might be for one of those reasons. But I honestly think he is up there. And by the time that he retires, I think that his name should be up there in probably the top 5 cricketers that India has ever produced, I would say.
I'd like to think it's nothing to do with his ability. I actually think a lot of it has been due to team combination issues and the fact that a lot of the time India believed they shouldn't play 2 spinners. But if you go back to some of our biggest ever wins, if you go back to Headingley 2002, Kumble and Harbhajan played that test match. And it wasn't a spin wicket. So really, I just feel that with Jadeja, also one thing to bear in mind, Rishi makes a great point. Jadeja took 6-7 wickets at Melbourne in that test match. No one ever talks about his wickets. He took an amazing run out as well, I think, of Steve Smith in Sydney run it out. Yes. So there's these moments that often go unnoticed because of the end result being days down the line. But, if you look at where his partnership with Rahane in Melbourne, there's no test series victory in Australia.
Brilliant, man.
So I believe that you're absolutely right. He needs to be there. But I think what people maybe don't see a lot with Jadeja is that if you look at the net effect of the runs, the wickets, and the fielding, it's probably better than a number 6 batsman is going to give you anyway. So the net effect is always bigger with Jadeja.
Guys, actually, just adding to this, right? Sorry, go on, Rishi, after you.
So one big point, in a test match when things are not going your way, you always depend on situations that the players can create. So Jadeja is that kind of an impact player who can actually, get in that run out, get in that, different bowling change. He can come in. So that is one reason that I like about Ravindra Jadeja, that he can actually change the game when your set players are actually not giving you those big wickets.
And another thing that you make a really good point, Rishi, that because your 3 bowlers that are going to play in that game can't really hold a bat as well, the 2 bowling all-rounders that can bat are spinners. So therefore, it probably means they have to play. And I think that's a good thing, because I think that actually Jadeja gives you a lot of control. If the game's going away from you and you need to go at 2 and over and just bowl 20 overs to keep it quiet, he's a brilliant man for that. But also he can attack.
Exactly.
So he's the most versatile cricketer that we have, and that's why you should go.
Guys,
just one point made earlier. I think Jack Callis's name was mentioned earlier. I would say Jadeja is a better fielder than Jack Callis was. That's all I'll say. So I mean, we will talk about Jadeja plenty when we get to our middle order podcast. I'm sure.
Ash, one point.
Yeah, go on.
Okay, guys, if we're saying Jadeja is a guaranteed name, which I agree with, but are we? Let's not discredit Ashwin, because the way he's played in the last year, he walks into the side as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. I would agree with that. But let's take a look at our picks, though, for that team. Obviously, we've got the Indian openers up there on the list. Those are all their stats. Those are the guys who we've got to choose from. Some impressive stats there, some questionable, some unknown entities. It's all up there. But I think we're going to go for Rohit Sharma and Shubman Gill as our opening selections in this lineup. So we've got Rohit Sharma, Shubman Gill, Pujara, and Kohli in the top 4, who are pretty much a guarantee. Rishabh Pant as the wicketkeeper, swashbuckler extraordinaire that he is, makes it into the team, and Jasprit Bumrah makes it in as our number 1 fast bowler. We're lobbying for Jadeja in there as well, but we will have to argue our case when it comes the time to talk about the middle order. So just in closing then, let me ask you guys, if we were to win this World Test Championship final, we love to talk about history and we love to talk about, all time where this Indian team ranks and all of that type of thing. Where do you guys reckon this Indian team ranks then if we were to go on to win the World Test Championship final?
I'll go since I heard a drop of silence. If I'm honest,
the other two
with
are thinking about it. You go ahead and ask.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna come up with some controversial opinion like I always do. But let's go. I think that the other international teams right now are not as good as they used to be 10, 15 years ago. And therefore, I don't think this is the best international team we've had. It's probably the most 3D team we've had, but I think we are made better because of our opposition not being as good as they used to be.
Okay, Rav, what do you think?
I don't fully agree with that. I take the point that the kind of baseline of the opposition is altered somewhat, but yeah, I would probably say this is, definitely the greatest Indian Test team if they were to win that. The reason being is just that you've got to look. 2021. If we were to win in Australia, win at home to England, which obviously we do quite a bit, but then to win the World Test Championship would be such a year for Indian cricket in terms of achievement. And also, I just feel that India are now finding the method. They're finding method abroad in terms of how to crunch out the series wins. And that, for me, is the big differentiator. Have there been sides that talent-wise are as good? Absolutely. I think the batting side of the MS Dhoni India Test team is a better batting unit. It's just a shame you can't put those batsmen with these bowlers. But if you were to look overall at the side and the achievement as a group and as a unit, I don't think it would be remiss to say that this is the best Indian Test team, purely because of the challenges that they've kind of faced over the last 2 years, where they've gone, where they've won. That for a D team to do that, and again, one thing I personally take a lot of pride as an Indian fan from back-to-back series wins in Australia, and I know that
100%.
We talk about England and we talk about how much they love the Ashes. They would bite your hand off for 2 series wins abroad in Australia in a row like we've got. So, I don't think that can ever be discounted.
Sure. Rishi?
Well, has to be one of the greatest Test team that we have. And let's not talk about the playing 11, but the other players as well, because a lot of players in the past 2 to 3 years have contributed to the success that we've actually made it to the top of the table for the last 5 years. And for the sole reason, in the last 2-3 years, the way we've come back in Test cricket, we've lost the first game in a lot of series, and then we've come back to win a lot of Test matches. For the fact that we've actually won 2 back-to-back Test series in Australia, first without any Smith and Warner in the opposition, and then when they were there and our players were out and about, they were injured, and the kind of cricket that we played. Similarly against England as well, and let's not forget, we came very close to beating South Africa in South Africa, and
Correct.
That 4-1 series in Australia, in England that we lost the last time we played, actually we played much better cricket than the scoreline suggests. So I think, we played very good cricket when it comes to Test cricket, and somewhere I feel that, even when we're losing, when we're not winning games, our players know how to create opportunities and bring us to a winning situation. So I think this team has a very good opportunity to go down in history and carve out something for themselves by winning this Test championship.
If you were to kind of look at what we've done as well, look at the reaction from the English media, the Australian media to this team, and that for me personally suggests quite a lot as to the quality of the side, because we've all followed the game and we've all followed India for a long time. They've never spoken about India like this. They've never spoken about our bowling lineup threat. Michael Vaughan, the troll master that he is, has said that he really believes that India can win this time. And, I don't think he is trolling, but you've got to look at where all the Australian guys, they can't, they're in awe of our talents at the moment. They can't even get a side together themselves. So it
wasn't that long ago when the foreign media and, in things like documentaries like Death of a Gentleman and all of that, were targeting India as the country who were trying to actively destroy Test cricket. when the IPL was created, we were told that India is the country that is basically trying to destroy Test cricket, take away all that we hold dear, and try to create this money-making entity. And now we have created, I think, a team which is a devastating Test team, one which I think that it's insane to argue that this isn't the greatest Indian Test team ever. I think that, yes, we had batting lineups that were better with your Tendulkars and Dravids and Gangulis and whatnot. None of those guys won back-to-back Test series in Australia. This team is by far and away the best Indian Test team that there ever is. And I don't want to hear anything other than the contrary to that. It just so happens that we're also coming up against a New Zealand team who are also the greatest New Zealand Test team that has probably ever been produced. Amish, what do you think?
I'm humble enough to say when I'm wrong. You guys have sold it to me, and after Rav started talking for the first 20 seconds, I realized that, wow, actually, I've just forgot about the journey.
I don't think you're wrong in what you're saying, in that like the standards, may have dropped and stuff. But the thing is, you can only beat who's in front of you, right? We can't ask this Indian team to travel back in time and take on Viv Richards and Clive Lloyd and all of those guys. Like, you can only beat who's in front of you.
They're very true, but I think it's also recognizing the fact that we've got a Test team that have that fighting spirit that we haven't seen anywhere in the last 25, 30 years I've been watching cricket. And the way we've turned it around, where someone has stood up and put their hands up when, like, how many times in the last 6, 7, 8 taken us out of a very difficult position. So I retract my opinion, and the mentality of this team is beyond what one could have thought India could have produced.
And that's what clinical debate is all about, people. Changing people's minds with your words and your thoughts and all of that. This is why the Bharat Army podcast is so good. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. That's all the time that we have today. Drop us a line on @the Bharat Army on all of our social media platforms to let us know who you think should be Shubman Gill, or should it be one of the other players. Let us know what you think. And that's all the time that we have this week, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us, everybody, and we will see you on the next World Test Championship podcast. Jai Hind.
Join the Bharat Army this June when India take on New Zealand at the World Test Championship final in Southampton. Official match ticket and travel packages available now. Visit bharatarmy.com now and come and join us in the stands.